Hey there. So today what I'd like to talk about is a quick and easy way of understanding and visualizing the left-right divide in politics. Listen, there are a lot of ways to explain, understand, and diagram politics, political leanings, the political divide, etc., etc. This is just one way, but it's kind of a quick and easy, down and dirty way that I've found to be helpful. So I hope it's helpful to you. So let's see. First of all, I have to find something. Nope. Okay, I'm going to have to use my arm. Alrighty. So we're going to imagine a line here, a straight line, okay? And right here in the middle, let's make this middle, right here in the middle is a dividing line, okay? Now, the dead center of this line is what we would call political independence, all right? Now, the truth is, there's really nothing, there's no movement called being an independent. What being an independent really means when you go to the voting booth is that sometimes you vote this way and sometimes you vote this way, okay? But for the sake of understanding our left-right divide, we're going to put the independents right at dead center. We're going to call them not left and not right. But the actual fact of the matter is when it comes to voting, they generally jump back and forth. That's why they're called the swing vote. Okay, so there we got independence, right smack in the middle. Now, the ends of this line, got to keep my arm up and keep it kind of straight. The ends of this line are, we would call towards the left, so this is going to be my left. Towards the left, we would call the end of that the extreme left, okay? And towards the right, we would call the end of that the extreme right, okay? And please forgive me if on your screen this is reversed, okay? Okay, so independence right smack dab in the middle. Right one step over to the right, you would have moderate Republicans. Okay, so these are Republicans, and they identify as moderates, which means they're pretty close to the center. Okay, so there we have Republicans. Now, one step further to the right, we have what would be called conservatives. Okay, one step further to the right would be libertarians. Okay, and all the way at the extreme right, we have anarchists. So what we see is that the further you go to the right, the role of government becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. So while a moderate Republican, right there, one step to the right, may still support general government solutions to social problems like welfare, Medicaid, government intervention to try to make society a healthier place, a better place, etc., etc. One step further over, what we would call conservatives, they would be more concerned about violations of the 10th Amendment. And of course, as we know, the 10th Amendment is the amendment that says, hey, federal government, if it doesn't say in the Constitution that these are your powers, they're not your powers. They belong to the states and to individuals. So federal government, just know your place. You've only got these powers and that's it. That's the 10th Amendment. Okay, so a conservative is going to be really concerned about the 10th Amendment. So something that means that the government is taking too much power for itself, particularly the central government, the federal government. interfering too much in people's lives. A conservative would be really concerned that that's unconstitutional, okay? Now, one step even further to the right, where you have libertarians, libertarians are very concerned with the size, scope, and power of the federal government. So where a conservative might support some government intervention, some government programs, say in education or in food stamps or something like that, a libertarian, what you would call, I guess, a true blue libertarian, would say that people and organizations should be taking care of those things, and it's not the place of the central government to interfere in people's lives. So that would be libertarians. Libertarians also tend to be kind of isolationist on foreign policy. I'm going to argue that that is a mistake, because actually, well, if taken too far, you don't want the government getting involved in every single foreign skirmish, for sure, okay? But one of the recognized powers of the central government is to defend the country, which involves having a strong, muscular military and a clear foreign policy. So too much isolationism, I would argue, is actually not a good thing and has nothing to do with the 10th Amendment, because it is one of the powers of the central government. But be that as it may, libertarians are very concerned about the size and power of the federal government. And now if we go to the extreme right, you have people who don't want really any government at all, except maybe, God knows what they want. But they're anarchists, okay? So that's how we go from moderate Republicans who may support lots of government programs, lots of government intervention, and a large federal government with all sorts of agencies and, the Department of Education and the Department of Consumer Affairs and the EPA and the IRS. Okay, then we have conservatives who definitely want to make the role of the federal government smaller, and they are concerned about the 10th Amendment, which tells the federal government to stay out of people's business and not to take too much power for itself. Then we go to libertarians, who that's their whole platform, is that the federal government needs to be a whole lot smaller and a whole lot less powerful. And they will say that that is what the founding fathers envisioned when they wrote the 10th Amendment and spelled out what powers the federal government had, and meaning that all the rest was not not in its wheelhouse. Okay, these are your powers, and the rest of this stuff, stay out of our lives. Okay, so that's going to be a libertarian's concern, big time. And then all the way to the extreme, anarchists. Okay, now let's go in the other direction. So we have independence in the middle. Like I say, there's no political platform. I'm going to switch arms because my arm is starting to hurt. There's no political, try to get it straight. There's no political platform really called independent. They just tend to jump back and forth depending on their preference of candidate. Okay, so here we have the center. Okay, here we got the center, independence. One step over to the left, we have Democrats. So Democrats are moderate, and but they still support more power and more active federal government, more government programs than the Republicans would, for sure. So, and one step further to the left, and we have progressives. And progressives would believe in things like universal health care and maybe free schooling for people, definitely things like maybe banning guns or different things where they see that the government has a role in intervening in society to make society a better place. Taxing soft drinks, goodness knows what else. So that's progressives, okay? And please forgive me if I'm not going into too much detail about progressive platforms, but generally progressives do believe that the government has a strong role in making society a better place, and there are things that should be taken over by the federal government, such as health care and definitely education, etc., etc. Okay, one step over to the left, and we have an even stronger role for the government. Those are people who are socialists, democratic socialists or regular socialists, but they believe in less of an emphasis on capitalism, more of an emphasis on equal wealth distribution. There shouldn't be such a big gap between rich and poor. Maybe higher taxes, taking more from the rich, giving more to the poor. So those are socialists, are democratic socialists. And then all the way on the extreme, you have a completely powerful government, which would be totalitarians, fascists, Marxists, etc. So extreme left, you have a totally powerful central government. Extreme right, you have a completely absent government, anarchy. Now, I'm going to put my arm down. Whew. Okay. I want to talk about one exception, okay? And from our neat little line, which let me do it one more time. Center is independent. Going to the right with each jump being a weaker central government and more power to the states and to the people. So we're going to go, independent is the center. Republican, conservative, libertarian, anarchist. Let's start at the center again and go towards the left. Democrat, progressive, socialist or socialist democrat. Okay, maybe you can go socialist democrat and then socialist. And then Marxist slash totalitarian slash fascist, whatever name you want to use for a completely powerful government. Okay, now we're going to talk about how to visualize the exception. And for this, I'm just going to use a really simple visual, and that is the yin-yang symbol. And I'm not going to draw it here. I don't have it to hold up. So if you don't know what the yin-yang symbol is, just look it up online. That's why the good Lord created the internet. Good Lord, fate, destiny, karma, chaos, higher power, science, Al Gore, whatever, created the internet. Okay, yin-yang symbol. So as everybody knows, the yin-yang symbol has the white side, the yin side, and the yang side. And there's a dot in the white side, a black dot, which represents the yang within the yin. And there's a white dot on the black side, which represents the yin within the yang. And dudes and dudettes, you don't have to know what that means in terms of Buddhist philosophy. No, we're just using it here to talk about the little contradictions that are on both sides of the political divide. Okay, so on the right side of the political divide, so we said the right, as you go further and further right, you have a smaller and weaker central government and more rights to individuals and states. Okay, so what is the little dot in there of contradiction? That would belong, and this is a big oversimplification, but that would belong to members of the religious right who, because of their specific religious beliefs or moral beliefs, want to legislate certain things, whether it's making certain things illegal or legislating certain kinds of morality. So that is the contradiction on the right, okay? That there are groups and people on the right who actually represent a contradiction. They represent more government and more power in the hands of the central government, okay? Or government overreach if you disagree with them, okay? And on the left side, there is definitely a strain of anarchy on the left. Okay, so you kind of just, a joke was, they used to joke about the Occupy Wall Street, some of the kids being like, destroy the central, give us free health care, and while you're at it, destroy the central government, and we don't trust the establishment. So on the left side, there is this contradiction where the general trend of the left is to a more activist central government and more power and more programs in the hands of the central government, but at the same time there is this kind of strain of rebellion and anarchy on the left. Okay, so those are the contradictions: the religious right and the anarchist left. But they are contradictions to the general trend, and the general trend is the further you go to the right, the less power and is in the hands of government, and more power in the hands of individuals and states. And the more you go to the left, the more you have government and government programs being seen as something valuable to make society a better place. So just anecdotally, I will tell you that during the, I think 2015, I was in New York City, and I had a project that I did with friends where we would sit in Union Square and give people advice, and it was awesome, and I miss it. A woman came up to me and she said, who should I vote for? Okay. And I said to her, okay, answer this question, and you can only pick one. The first was, the government should get out of our lives and leave us alone. And the second choice was, the government has an important role in making society a better place. She chose number 2. I said, vote Democrat. So again, gross oversimplification, but it was helpful, and it also pointed out to her what her general internal trend was. And I think that's actually a useful question for people to ask themselves. You know, which one of those would they choose? And you know, that can be useful because there's so much political noise out there, and there's so much kind of propaganda on both sides, and each side wanting to look like something that it's not, that the general trend, which is the further to the right, the less power and activism in the hands of the government, and the further to the left, the more power and the more activism in the hands of the government and its different branches and agencies, etc. Okay, I hope that was helpful. And if you have any comments, leave them below. And look, definitely, I just want to re-emphasize this. There are other ways of understanding government. There are, what do you call them? Those boxes where you have 2 factors here and 2 factors here, and then you plot your way somewhere in the box. They're all very valid. The one that I use, the linear line to the right and to the left, I would say is the simplest, but I think it has a basic accuracy to it. Alrighty then. I hope that A, that this was helpful, and B, that you came out of this without being able to tell what my political leanings are, at least in this particular video. Alrighty then. Bye.